Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Hayley Spira-Bauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. I get to have a friend on who's doing awesome work today, and it is so fun for me. I want to introduce you to Nic Starr. She's an education customer success manager at Adobe. Nic, welcome.
Thank you, Hayley, for having me.
You know, it's so fun that we reconnected because you and I did Teach for America together in New York City in 2006. And we have been on this education journey kind of parallel to one another, and now both landed in EdTech.
Yep.
And I really found you by way of this like infamous, famous, I don't know which is better, but bingo card, but we're not going to get into that yet.
Okay.
Because I do want to hear all about that. But I want you to share with everybody like how you came to be. So can you tell us all, how did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
That's such a great question. I would say I took risk. And that's how I came to be, because if you asked me that question, say even 5 years ago, I think I would have had a different answer. But as with most things, when you've done the work for as long as we have, you see how things do connect. And maybe in the moment they don't, but they do. And I would say the through line in all of this is risk. As you mentioned, we met almost 20 years ago through Teach for America.
Wow.
Yeah. And at that time, I was like, oh, 2 years teaching, and then I'm going to law school, or I'm doing policy. And then I found myself 6 years in the classroom. And then after that, 4 years as administrator. And so 10 years in a school building, I was like, okay, something's going to be different. I didn't want to be a principal because that job is the work of gods and goddesses. And I did not have that capacity. So yeah, I just kind of went on some finding self journeys, the hero journey, where you're just kind of dibbling and dabbling. So almost 20 years later, I am in EdTech. And again, it's been a fun ride. It's been a ride that I wouldn't have written for myself, but one that has really come to a great place where I get to circle back and have these conversations with you.
I know. It's amazing. Could you remind me what grades you taught when you were in the classroom?
Yeah. Fun fact, I actually taught elementary special ed, and that's not what I wanted to teach when I joined Teach for America. Actually, when I was assigned that, I wanted to quit. I was like, I got accepted. I'm moving to New York City. Like, this is like the dream, except that it was with younger folks. I thought I was going to be like a middle school or high school history teacher or something. And
wait, that's so funny because I too did not get to teach the thing I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach middle school science.
Okay, what did you end up teaching?
Elementary school.
See?
And it's because of my credit situation, because of what classes I took in high school and college disqualified me, which is so wild because there's like a shortage of science and special education teachers in middle and high school. So, big question mark there. Now I look back though, I wouldn't trade it. Would you trade it?
No, not like, and that's why I said like risk. You just like go with what is. You have your wants, your needs, whatever, and you put it out there. And then sometimes that's what you get, and sometimes that's not what you get. But I ended up doing it for 6 years. And then not only did that for 6 years, I ended up being a professor of early childhood special education. So ended up teaching what I worked on. And so it's a gift that I didn't think I needed or wanted. So
what would you say is the biggest risk you took or have taken as it relates to your education and career journey? Is it that one? It could be that one.
No. I think the biggest risk was when it was the deciding factor on if I wanted to become a principal or not. I had a great relationship with my school leaders. I was in position and primed to take on that next step. But it was more, and I loved the community I worked with. I loved the teachers that I worked with, but it just something didn't align with me. And then when I say aligned, it wasn't like the same thing of like, I don't want to teach elementary, I want to teach history, high school. This was like something deeper. And I trusted that gut. And I wandered for for a while, for a couple of years. I don't I this is random, but I ended up doing real estate investing in mobile homes. I was consulting across the country. I also was a maitre d' at a restaurant for a little bit. Like
Wow, quite the journey. Yeah.
I did a little bit of like everything just because I did not want to be a principal, but I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So yeah, that was the risk.
So, how did you wind up back now doing the work you're doing? And why do you feel drawn to this work you're doing at Adobe?
Yeah. So kind of in that hero's journey of just kind of wandering for a little bit, I knew I wanted to pivot into kind of the corporate space in with education. I didn't know if that was going to be like learning and development for like internal purposes, or if, you know, some corporations do have like these education arms where it's like more external work. I wanted to do something in that space. I just didn't know how to get there. And a good friend, a colleague also from Teach for America in Dallas Fort Worth, really laid it out clear for me about the next steps. And he made a quadrant and he said, okay, usually folks don't jump in, change their role in industry in one move. So I was, you know, an administrator in education, and I wanted to be a learning and development person in corporate America. That's a change in role and a change in industry. So he really like laid it out for me of how to find either similar roles that I've done before, but in a new industry, or within the same industry, really fight for or ask for different role opportunities. Um, and so I was like, that makes sense to me. And that's what I did. I worked at Teach for America for a little bit, doing teaching and learning leadership development for core members in Dallas Fort Worth. I ended up at Relay doing early childhood special education work there. And really within those roles, because I wanted to pivot into tech, started become a heavy tech user, both for like my personal roles, but then also helping others. And so as I took on those kind of key actions, I applied for jobs with the tools that I used.
Very cool. And what I think really captured my attention, even though we haven't really talked in a while, was this bingo card you made.
Yeah.
Tell everybody about the bingo card. And like, I
Yes.
want to note what I also found really great was your moniker on LinkedIn, which is Analog Girl in a Digital World. So tell us about your analog life and how you wound up with an AI bingo.
Yeah. Um, Okay, so I'm a paper and pen gal. I think note taking and writing is, neurologically the best way to like retain information. I have sometimes attention needs. I'm squirrel. I'm all these other things. Phone, computer devices always take my attention, but if I can keep it on pen and paper, I'm usually probably like really good of like actually retaining that. However, I work in a digital space. I love digital tools. I live by my digital calendar. So that quote is actually one from Dallas native, because I'm originally from Dallas, Erica Badu, who talks about being this analog girl in a digital world. And I feel like that really encapsulates my being and my essence. And so to kind of pivot to this bingo card and world, again, going back to risk taking, and thinking about the world that we live in. AI is a thing. It's most likely not going anywhere. And I wanted to make sure that I became a power user, and not just for myself and my role, because that's important, but for like my life. So I had my first child last summer, and I remember like sitting there reading a headline saying, that children born in the year 2025 or 2024 were going to be potentially the first people to live to the 22nd century. And I just kind of had my head just kind of like detached for a little bit, being like, wow, that could be my son. My son, goodness willing, lives to be 76 and 2100. And what is that world? What does AI do, doesn't do? And I was like, okay, I need to get onto this and I need to not be overwhelmed. And so gamification, I'm a teacher. I know how to make something bite size and tangible. So the bingo card came to be, and it was a personal commitment that I held to myself, but that I made publicly. So January, I don't know, 7th of this year, I posted it on LinkedIn and asked others to join me in the journey.
Okay, so tell us what's on the bingo card. What have you crossed off so far and what's left to be crossed off?
Yeah. So it's a year-long commitment. So there's what, 25 squares. There's the free middle square in the middle. So that's 24 like initiatives I'm going to dive into. And each square, I give myself 2 weeks to kind of get to it. And I pretty much like do design thinking around each sprint. So kind of like, over these 2 weeks, the first kind of like foray is just diving into like, what is this? So if it's craft a custom AI powered workflow, okay, I don't like, tell me more. Like, what is this? So I do some research. The next piece of this sprint is then I decide like a direction. So if that's a specific tool that I want to use or a certain outcome that I want to gain based on my research. Then my third kind of foray is actually like prototype, actually like use what I have found and crafting it towards that educational lens. Though some people can use it for parenting or work purposes, whatever that is. And then kind of like my fourth roundup is reflections of like, what did I learn? What were some successes, challenges, and potential next steps? So that's kind of like what the design of it is. And so far, actually, as of yesterday, I've completed my fifth like little sprint here so far. So I don't know, what is it? 5 out of 25. That's less than a quarter.
That's a fifth. You're 20%. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
My
Yeah.
son just started fractions, so it's real top of mind for me right now. Wait, okay, so which one is your favorite that you've done so far?
So out of the five, so I built a chatbot, I've launched a podcast, I've learned about how to spot and tackle bias in AI. I've used a multimodal function to do identification of unknown tools using like the camera function. And then I've met with an AI leader. And my favorite, I would actually have to say, is the chatbot. And the reason for that is it was the thing that kind of like unlocked what AI is for me. And the reason why I say unlocked it is because you have to actually build your chatbot, you have to customize it. And shout out to PlayLab and also Relay Graduate School of Education. I took a workshop with them and I thought it was just me like gonna sit and get where I like listen to how to do it. And the first session was like, okay, so like open up your computers, click on the link and like actually dive in. I was like, oh, I'm gonna log off. I thought I was gonna like. And so it was like, and I'm from Texas, so excuse the like meat analogies, but it was like I learned how the sausage was made. I learned about what powers LLMs, what data is being pulled, what is the function of how language is either, obviously input, but then the output. I learned. And I was like, actually, this is not as scary as I thought it would to be. And I could also see how there's like, the pitfalls and like where people could get caught up. But yeah, the chatbot kind of opened my world. But here's the thing, in doing this process, one of the leaders of PlayLab who goes, oh, well, chatbot is going to go the way of a floppy disk for AI. And I was like, oh, it's already like old school. Like here I am learning
What replaces the chatbot according to them?
all these other multimodal functions.
Yeah.
So, your mobile phone ability to talk to it, I can imagine there's other ones here that I haven't even tackled yet, which is like the workflows, translating languages. I mean, the future.
The future. So by the time this episode gets released, we will no longer be relevant.
Nope. Yeah.
Even if maybe we were never were. Okay. So obviously, I'm curious about your podcast. Okay. Tell me about your AI podcast.
Well, it was testing. So I work for Adobe, and part of working for Adobe and supporting school districts and universities across the country is that I also get to become a power user of, what we are working with others with. And we have this amazing tool called Adobe Podcast. And it does really cool things in terms of speech to text. And then once that text is on there, you can like edit, you can bring in different music, which again, with Adobe, we are making sure that our sources are, copyrighted. So what's great about working with Adobe and using these podcast tools, or even really any of our tools like Express, is that our stuff is part of our stock images and or sounds. And so we are not infringing on like copyright issues, or, we are commercially safe. So whether if I'm doing in K-12 or higher ed or in the workspace, like, what's being created or shared is been properly vetted so that we're not encroaching on anyone's intellectual property, so to speak. So anyways,
that's awesome. On the early iteration of this podcast, I personally didn't know you could buy music to put on a podcast. And so my husband played music for me because he plays a million instruments. And there's a better way. There's a better way.
No, well, there's many ways, because shout out to your husband for
creativity.
And then every time he hears it, he's like, yeah, that's me.
It wasn't set for the vibe though that I was going for. Now I have a much more upbeat one that I purchased. But in general, he is amazing and talented, but very cool to hear that it's already embedded in the software that can be used for an AI podcast. I saw someone use AI to create a full podcast using their voice, their language, their ideas. Is that what you're talking about as well?
Yeah, so there's many ways to think of AI powered, which is why some of these things is just there's no one use case for even just one of these squares. So for example, launch a podcast powered by AI. There's actually many different ways to do it. So I mentioned Adobe Podcast. There's really great, speech to text, there's music, there's editing, that's all powered by AI. There's also other functions, say Google Notebook LM, where you're not using your voice, but you're using more kind of text to speech in the sense of you're using someone else's voice that's bringing in and synthesizing thoughts and ideas. So that's another example of, a podcast powered by AI. Adobe also has tools like Audition, which is more what the industry professionals use to edit, where you can use some AI functions that way. And actually use Audition when I had a podcast that was supported through Spotify. So a couple years ago, I was part of a cohort where I was able to work with Spotify for their kids and family unit. They flew us out to California. We had a whole week intensive where we actually would create podcasts for their platform. Unfortunately, that program no longer exists, but we were really able to meet with industry leaders who were, I don't think they were calling it, what were they calling it, AI powered at the time? Probably not. But yeah, so there's many ways. Again, my animal analogy, many ways to skin a cat. So there's many ways to do AI powered anything with podcasts.
So I use so many tools to do.
What are you
doing? Oh yeah, no, I use Granola AI to record and then summarize the conversation. I import all of my transcripts into my own LLM, a notebook, and I use that to prepare for speeches I'm giving or conversations I'm having, because I'm not the foremost expert in AI, but a lot of the folks that I'm interviewing are. And so,
okay, pause. What's an expert in AI?
Well,
How would you define that?
yeah. So I've had the chance to interview some really smart people who have been studying AI and how it's getting implemented in schools and how schools are creating structures for ethical use of AI and equitable use of AI. So just, people that are writing the book on it, these are some of
Sure.
the brilliant guests like Dan Fitzpatrick, Amanda Bickerstaff, Alex Coach, like these names are really, really insightful folks. Today's actually AI Literacy Day, which
It is.
2 years ago, Amanda Bickerstaff pitched as an idea, and now it exists. So that's who I consider an expert in AI.
Okay. I agree. And I would love to challenge everyone else to also like go into that space of, expert or not. Actually, because it is National AI Literacy Today, I posted on LinkedIn that no one would say that anyone's an expert internet user, right? Like those are not, you use it, and everyone has a different function or an approach to internet usage. Like the way you use it is different than the way I use
Sure,
it.
sure.
But that doesn't make you any less of an expert per se. So, with my AI bingo challenge, I would, my goal is to say, pick something a square. You don't even have to do the whole bingo card. That's my commitment to myself to kind of power through all those. But pick something that works for you for your specific context and or specific reason. And that to me will get the wheels going. And so, Hayley, I consider you an expert AI user. You just mentioned all these tools that I've never heard of because guess what? It works for you and what you deem as important and what you need.
Yeah, that's very kind. I think you're right, though. Like, we wouldn't say that about the internet. That's a
No,
very valid point.
right.
I'm a forever learner. So I always want to be better. And I don't believe in arriving, like we're just on this journey.
Well, and that's why you get to do the cool things like interviewing people because like you said, you are constantly in this, learning mind, beginner's mind, so to speak, which probably made you an excellent educator and teacher and great for your students. So,
Oh, that's very kind. Man, I think back to those teaching days. Those were something.
yeah.
It shaped so much of who I am as a human. Okay, so speaking of teaching days,
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you my final question, which is what advice, with all you know now today, would you give a teacher starting their career at this moment?
Hmm. Um, expect the unexpected in the most optimistic way. And the reason for that is I think, and I was this way 20 years ago, which is you think you're going in thinking that you know what it is or what you want to get out of it or whatever. But I was just constantly surprised by teaching. And and in the best ways. Like I remember the first day I walked in to the school building where students were arriving and I'm going into the cafeteria and I was teaching in the South Bronx and I said something to the effect because I'm a Texan, "Hey y'all." And this kid, I remember his name, Alejandro, looked up at me and he's like, "You're not from here, are you?" Like, correct. You got me. But I remember that. And like I remember them walking into my classroom and I remember my heart. It's weird because I felt this way with my son. It's like I never loved strangers so much before. I love them. I instantly love my kids. So, advice to teachers entering the classroom, expect the unexpected in the most optimistic ways. Like this will change your life. For the better. And that hopefully in turn, because it's changed your life, you will therefore change the lives of those who you work with and for.
Nick, that's beautiful. I love that.
Thanks.
Nic, thank you so much for coming on the podcast and sharing about your journey in the AI bingo card. I am so excited to share in my newsletter the information you covered here today and give everybody a glimpse into what you're doing. And hopefully that inspires other people to dive in like you have.
Yeah, just take one step at a time.
Yeah. And thank you for coming on. This is so fun. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.